Hola all, welcome back to Soul Mechanics. Finally, I've been kind of procrastinating on making this video. I wasn't sure how to put it together, and I'm not sure how much time I have because I seem to have run out of space somehow again. But I guess I'll probably have to clip it into two. But this is an exciting video for me to do, specifically because, as it turns out, for the first time in what seems a very, very long time, I was wrong. Maybe. Probably not. But something new has emerged. Now, as many of you would know if you watched any of my videos or some of my videos, I do not believe in ghosts. Or like hauntings and such. If you ask me, hauntings would be more aptly suited for a metaphorical reference, like we have the ghosts of past philosophers haunting us and the thoughts that we have. You know, we have the ghosts of past ideas haunting. The whole world is haunted with ideas from you know, scientific endeavors that were eventually proven false or what have you, that we still hold on to. You know, many ideas haunt us, but you know, a great deal of them still hold truth. I mean, all the pieces of the puzzle, they come together. It's not like you can take something like Newtonian physics and then replace it with relativity and toss out Newtonian physics. They fit together. Quantum mechanics fits with relativity. It becomes directive relativity. These ghosts make up our person, and it's a part of what we might call the Akashic Record, which is something that I've been kind of studying into. And then I have a few more. I might place links in here to a couple different videos that other people have made that I've spoken with who had they got a grasp on what they're talking about insofar as these things are concerned. And you know, it's better for me to give, this is one of those points where I'm going to cite references because it saves time so that I don't have to explain shit. These people can explain it to a certain degree. I don't agree with them entirely. I don't think that they're entirely correct, but they got a lot of it down. In any case, we have what you might call a ghost. We know that. That's basic. That's common sense amongst anybody that's practiced with this, especially since the advent of the Monroe Institute and their practices. We know that it can easily be trained to do what people call astral projection or whatnot, which again, I'm still going to clump all of these together as dreams because they all fit the same category, and ultimately this is just another level of the dream. It's all a dream. But we have a difference between what we call an ephemeral self, which is this immediate body and this immediate circumstance, this memory, the here now memory, as Robert Monroe would term it, and the perpetual self, which is the self that we experience during dreams and during astral projection, the phantom body, which basically that's, I mean, people call it an astral vehicle, or, you know, people have all kinds of different terms for it, and ghosts would be one of them, I suppose. But you know, the phantom body is pretty much as simple as it gets. I mean, that's what it is. Rupert Sheldrake spoke of it as morphogenetic fields, that's a big one. That's a good one. You can look into that. It exists. It's constantly going. It's constantly experiencing. And if you build a bridge between this and that, the ephemeral and the perpetual selves, you will in fact retain all the memory, and you'll stop forgetting that you've dreamed. You'll stop forgetting these projections, and you'll just be going. You won't really go to sleep anymore. You're not going to forget things. There will be no lapse in memory. Sometimes you have to pull memories back if a dream really spans out. My dreams can span out for years at a time in a single night. So sometimes I have to work on pulling all the memories back. But in any case, I do not believe in ghosts like haunting, like people die and then they hang around. It doesn't make sense to me that there would be this spirit hanging around. But recently we've worked with people who claim to work with spirits and have interacted with spirits and such, and some strange shit happened over the course of that, almost immediately following becoming you know, starting to work with these people, specifically the director of another group that we've kind of coordinated with. She claims to work with spirits, and something very odd happened while I was on the telephone with her, and there were occurrences that followed that were, I'm going to get into that in the second video. That's pretty weird. But I can say that I have experienced what we're going to call spirits, what we think people think of as spirits. Don't know what they are yet as a part of the investigation, but I can tell you one thing, that from my experience, they're not people hanging around. But my previous ideology, my theory would be that it was like memory data recorded in the environment was being, picked up by people who are sensitively tuned to that sort of thing. Maybe picking up records from past events or even future events. That's a potentiality. We are retroactive. That's proven as well. We know that for a fact. It's basic common sense. But I had an experience during the extremity deprivation, which I passed up 2 months on you guys that I didn't tell you about this, because the first one, this is actually when I made my first video about it, crossing the line. This was what I wanted to talk about, that I experienced that time. But I had to put it all together, and it's essentially, it had a story that went on that's still continuing, so it's going to follow up in these videos for the most part. But I had an experience during that where sometimes it takes forever and ever to get into that state where I kind of slip into the ether and I see these kind of visions or what have you, these experiences that are of another world. And this time it took forever and ever. It took like days and days and days that I was awake and I was going, and no food, no sleep, just constantly pushing myself and running all over the city and shit. And I didn't really experience much of anything weird until like the very end of it. A song played on the radio, and there's a certain hymn in the song, a part of the song that triggered something that just all of a sudden I popped into it for a moment, and this was just real brief. It was real quick and simple. I was in a hospital, and I don't want to mention who this person was that I saw, because it might be upsetting for them if they see this, but I saw somebody bedside with their mother, and the mother was, she was in a bad way in the hospital, and there were things, it was like this, everything had like this purplish kind of hue to it, and you get that, it's kind of like a grayish, twilight, purplish almost kind of hue that you get when you're in this ether, this other world. But there were things that were kind of hovering with the people that were like attached to them. I'm not sure how to explain. They were attached to them, almost like puppet masters, like they were pulling the strings on the puppet that was the human body, but they weren't exactly doing that. It was like they weren't the human body and the entity that was the human body was going on its own. It was autonomous. It was doing its own thing. It was living its own life. And it has a perpetual self. It has a phantom body attached to it that is, essentially its field, its aura, its halo. That's the energy source, pretty much. It's where the consciousness tunes into the body and becomes this field that encompasses it and mimics it for the most part for a while. And of course, after death, we know from the training in the Monroe Institute, they've seen that these astral bodies or these phantom bodies they'll go somewhere after the physical body dies. They'll leave and they'll go somewhere, and we don't really know where, because eventually even our best trackers lose track of them. Eventually the best remote viewers and projectionists, they're going to lose track of them because they go somewhere. We don't know where, but they definitely don't just vanish. I mean, they kind of vanish to us, but we can see them on their way to this place, and eventually they start to create their own realities, essentially, kind of create dream worlds for themselves, which I suppose you would consider to be a heaven or a hell scenario, depending on their belief structure. But then eventually they do go somewhere, we don't know where. It's part of the investigation. But, I think we may have had trackers who claim to have seen these spirits actually reincarnate, go through the process of creating this dream world, living in it, and then eventually reincarnating, some faster than others, but for the most part, they go somewhere. They do go somewhere, and they are a part of the human body until it dies, and they leave. And it can leave, during the night, during sleeping. It can leave any time. Like, you could be projecting right now. Your perpetual self is out there doing things right now. It's in a different kind of zone, I suppose you could say. It's difficult to explain that because we don't want to get too deep into the terminology. We want to make it as simple as possible. You do have what you could call a ghost in this shell that, you know, can eject and explore. But what I saw was something else that was attached to the body that was with it, like another person. And it was communicating with the same thing attached to the mother. And it said something like they were speaking to each other, and it was very sad, and the mother was scared. The mother entity, the thing that was hovering attached, it was scared. The spirit, I suppose you would call it. And it didn't know what to do. And the other one said pretty much said just go and drift and find another person to attach to, pretty much. Just like almost like a parasite. I don't want to call them that. Let's have respect for them, whatever they are. They have feelings, obviously, but I have no idea what they are. Never seen anything like that before. And when eventually the one that was hovering on the mother just kind of drifted off into the ether and pretty much vanished. I don't know where, but it was very clear that the one that was speaking from the daughter's perspective knew where the other one was going, or at least knew that it was going through this process, and told her, don't worry, don't be afraid, just find somebody else to attach to, pretty much, is basically what it said. Almost like a reincarnation, I suppose you could say. And then the mother one drifted off and vanished, and then it turns out that during that experience, the actual person that I knew, their mother was in the hospital and had actually passed away at that time, so that's corroborating evidence that something in fact did transpire there, and whatever it was, I saw it just for that brief moment, for that brief conversation, and then that is my experience of a spirit, I guess you could say. I saw it, it was there, I have evidence to corroborate that that it really happened, so there's launching the investigation. Now the next video will get into what actually happened the next time, after that, this last time that I did it, which went wild, like pretty fucking crazy. So we'll talk about that in the next video. I have to clip this one because I'm not sure how much time I actually have, but I know it's got to be under 20 minutes. So thank you all for watching. We'll see you in the next one almost immediately after. Keelah, Taerve, siari, Namasté.